Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm here by myself today, Friday, April 4th. So April 1st was my dad's birthday, or no, April 2nd was my father's birthday. April 3rd is my sister's birthday. And April 4th is my sister-in-law's birthday. So a happy birthday, Pauline. I'm sure you're not listening to this, but we are glad you're here. All of you from Instagram, from Facebook Live, from and you know me, I'm not great with text. So I'm trying to see where we're live. I'm assuming we are. Oops. And if we are, could you just say hello to me? That would give me a lot of reassurance that I've pressed the right button since I'm here by myself. It gets a little scary. Okay, thank you. I'm so glad we're here. All right, today we're talking about a really important topic. How do you get through things getting worse before they get better? Part of healing. So how do you do that? How do you do that? Tell me, how do you think of a situation in your life where things got worse before they got better? We have lots of stories to tell, I'm sure. So how did you get through the things getting worse before they get better? Part of the stuff. Because things always get worse before they get better. For those of you who've been kind of hanging out with me with our Facebook Lives over this last couple of weeks, you've seen my painting get worse before it gets better, right? It's now just starting to get better, just starting. It looked pretty gruesome for a while. And finally, I fixed her eyes so that they're the same size and they're getting better. But I'm not done with her yet. Maybe I'll be done if I work hard over the weekend. By the time we do our workshop on Tuesday, you'll get to see the done version of her. I'm not sure. It takes a long time for me to paint. And so how do you get through the things getting worse before they get better stage of life? It's not just in healing, it's just in life. Now, I have a story that I found out this week. So, I'm in Prescott right now. This is our house that we live in the summertime because it's so hot in Phoenix. But we're here now because we decided after our house is 30 years old and the kitchen is 30 years old. And I thought, you know what? Before I die, I really would like to have a new kitchen. So I'm going to get this kitchen done. I'm getting older. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to get a new kitchen. So we ripped out the kitchen. And I also decided that we would rip out we have an office in the home because my office is in our bedroom. And I would like to change that and put my office in our office, but it was a mess and it was built in and it was breaking down. So we thought, we'll rip that out too. So that's being ripped out. The kitchen's being ripped out. So we're sort of here while that all is noisy. I can't do Facebook Lives. They're tearing apart everything. And guess what? They found termites in my house. Ooh. So now things are getting worse before they're getting better, right? Costing more money, taking more time, creepy little termites. I don't even want to go home. I have to go home on Wednesday for a haircut, and I have to fly to Chicago. But it's icky. Things are getting worse. How do you deal with that? I mean, this is life. Things get worse, whether it's silly things like paintings or big deal things like termites. It was expensive to call in termite inspectors to get our whole house termite proofed. And so now the money I was going to use for some other new decor in my kitchen and office is going to termite repair. And this is just life. This is reality. Oftentimes things get worse before they get better. How do you handle that? How do you get through that? And I want to teach you some how-tos, but before I start to do that, I'd love to hear how you do it. What is your story of a moment where you realized things were going to get harder before they got better? Maybe it's a silly thing, like, you went in for some teeth cleaning and all of a sudden your cavity fell out or your tooth fell out and now you need a root canal and now you need all kinds of harder things and it's more expensive. It takes more time. It's more effort. It's more pain, all of that. This is just what happens in life. How do you get through that? Let's get some how-tos going because I'm a how-to girl. When I first started writing books, one of the reasons that motivated me to write books back when I was a Christian counselor is that the books that I was reading from Christian leaders and Christian disciplers were they were forward-thinking books like, okay, here's where you are, so here's where you need to be. You need to be holy, you need to be mature, you need to be grateful, you need to be, peaceful. But they never told you how. They never told you how to get from where you are to where you're going. Pray, but like how? How do you pray to get there? And so when I started writing my books, I really am a how-to girl. I really want to know step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And then when I write my books very practical. And then when I began to read some other authors' books who just wrote so poetically, like Anne Voskamp and others, I just wished I could write like that. And that's not who I am. I'm a pretty practical how-to person. And so how do you get things better? Baby steps. Baby steps. Yes, surround yourself with support, Christian people who can support you. What else? How else do you get through hard? How else do you get through the hard before it gets better? Yeah. How-tos are needed. Yes, for sure. All right, so get support. Support is crucial, right? So I couldn't get rid of the termites myself. We have to get support. I need someone to do that for me. Sometimes I could go to Home Depot and I could know how to do that, but I would have to get some support. I'd have to read up on it. I'd have to get someone who knew what termites look like and where to look and all of those kind of things. And so we sometimes need support to get through the hard. Oftentimes we need support. How-tos are needed. Yeah, we had to get used to the fact that before we could get to our original step 1, there were multiple steps we had to do before step 1. And we just assumed that every step was going to take longer than anticipated. Okay, Gail, thank you so much, because you just said something really important. We just assumed. So this word, we just assumed, has to do with mindset. There's a phrase in New Age is too strong of a word, but there's a phrase in popular psychology right now that your thinking creates your reality. Now, I have a hard time wrapping myself around that completely, because I do think that sometimes our reality shapes our thinking too. But our thinking does shape our reality. So, for example, I didn't think those termites into existence. They were there before I even knew they were there. They were there, right? So you might be in a bad marriage and you're not just imagining that. You're not just thinking that. It's there. It's there. Okay? But if you're thinking that, oh my gosh, our marriage is really hard and I don't know what to do to get it better. I don't know what to do. Things are getting worse before they're getting better. And this means this is bad. All right. Once you label hard or getting worse as bad, now you're shaping your reality, right? So I didn't label the termite find as bad. I labeled it as icky. It is icky. I'm glad I didn't see them. All right. But it's icky, but it's not bad. Actually, I labeled it as good. Thank God. Thank God we saw termites, or we didn't see the termites, we saw the tracks. Thank God we saw the tracks before we redid the kitchen. I don't want to put all new stuff on top of termites. Thank God we saw that. Right? So that makes me grateful for hard versus resentful for hard, right? It is hard. It's taking more money. It's taking more time. I have to be up here longer, all of that stuff. But hard isn't always bad. So here's your first step. What's our attitude or our mindset toward hard or when things get worse? Do we immediately label that as bad, or do we label that as hard? Hard. And maybe hard is necessary because it helps us see things more clearly, right? So, for example, some of you are waking up to the hard reality that marriage counseling isn't going to work for your marriage. Because as we said in previous Facebook Lives, and we're going to talk about in our workshop on Tuesday, if you haven't signed up yet, please sign up, because we have over 6,000 women registered, and we want to make sure that everybody who's wanting to come gets in the door and all of that. So please sign up. If he hasn't hit you, is it still abuse? Some of you don't know. And sometimes you're afraid to know, because if you know, things are going to get worse before they get better. But hard isn't always bad. If it gets worse, if you see at the workshop, oh my gosh, I'm in an abusive relationship, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And so I'm prepping you for that right now by helping you say to yourself, thank God that I know what it is. I mean, if you had a cough, wouldn't it be better for you to know that you had bronchitis versus you just had a cough so that you could get the proper treatment? Or if you had a cough and you had lung cancer, but you thought it was bronchitis, wouldn't it be better for you to know what you have, even though it's worse? It's lung cancer. This is how it happened to my mom. She was going to the doctor for almost a year, and he was telling her it was bronchitis, it was, asthma, treating her. Nothing worked. I bet you've been going to marriage counseling for years and years and years. This counselor, that counselor, this counselor, that counselor, nothing's working. Why? Because you don't have the right diagnosis. She didn't have bronchitis. She had lung cancer. All the antibiotics in the world is not going to fix lung cancer. All the marriage counseling in the world is not going to fix a destructive, abusive marriage until the abuser himself or herself takes responsibility and does their own work first. Let me say this. Get your pen, write it down. Abuse, any kind of abuse. And if you don't know if you're in an abusive relationship, come to the workshop on Tuesday and I'll tell you all the different kinds of abusive relationships. Abuse, any kind of addictions, and adultery, especially repeated adultery. Abuse, addictions, adultery. These are not marriage problems. You're like, what? They cause marriage problems for sure. They cause marriage problems. But if you go into marriage counseling trying to fix broken trust, which is what these problems cause, or you don't feel safe with this person, right? You can't build back trust and you can't build back safety when the person who keeps breaking trust and keeps breaking safety isn't working on their stuff, right? I mean, it'd be like trying to, put my tile down over the damaged termites without fixing the termites. I can have a new kitchen, but the new kitchen is going to have a really icky problem underneath the floors, right? You can go to marriage counseling and make it feel better for a little while, but if there's termites in your marriage, you better deal with them. And that's not done through marriage counseling. Marriage counseling deals with the brokenness that his problems caused, but you can't deal with that brokenness. You can't repair the trust and safety of damaged relationship that he broke it, if it's that cause, addictions, adultery, abuse, unless he's willing to look at that, unless he's willing to really do his own work. Why do I keep acting like this? Why do I keep losing my temper? Why do I keep putting my wife down? Why am I a micromanager of it? He's got to look at what he's doing, and he's got to want to change. Because until he does that, you can't rebuild that broken trust. So if you attend our workshop next week, I'm preparing you now. Things might get a little worse before they get better as you get clear as to what the real problem is. Like we got clear. Oh, we don't just have termite tracks that old termites left. That could have been it, but that's what wasn't it. Once we had the termite inspection, nope, we've got live termites. We've got live active termites. We've got to fix that before we do anything else. And if you're in a destructive marriage with a destructive, abusive person, that person has to do some internal fixing. And I'll talk about what that looks like in the workshop. So I want to save you thousands of dollars in wasted marriage counseling. When you've been there and you're scratching your head and the counselor doesn't get it because they're seeing both of you as equal sinners and both of you need work. And you do, it's true, you both need work. But you cannot repair the fundamental issues of safety and trust with someone who keeps breaking safety and trust, right? They have to recognize that that has to stop. And it's not just, I'm sorry, that stops those patterns. They have work to do. Just like we don't just change our eating habits overnight just because we're sorry we ate so much the night before. We still have habits and patterns that we've got to work on changing. And so it's going to get worse. And so first, your mindset, okay, worse isn't always bad. It might be the blessing that the truth I'm seeing clearly. Oh my gosh, I have termites. Oh my gosh, this isn't my issue. I have issues for sure, but broken trust and safety is not because of me. I might be messy. I might not always say things the perfect way, but I don't cause him to cheat on me. I don't cause him to watch porn. That's his issue. And if he's not willing to work on that and do his work to get healthy and rebuild trust, things are going to get worse. Things are going to get worse. I can make a beautiful kitchen, but if I don't fix the termites, my house, the foundation is going to get worse because I haven't fixed that problem. Okay, so mindset. Worse isn't bad. Sometimes it's a blessing because you can see more clearly. You can see new ways. So I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to write this down. I don't know what the worst in your life is. How do I get through the worst before things get better and healing? What might be possible for you to see if you weren't so scared of things getting worse? What might be possible for you to see more clearly if you weren't living in fear of the what ifs? If you said, God, thank you for helping me see clearly. Jesus says that you shall know the truth, and the truth will what? Set you free. He tells us in Psalm, you desire truth in my innermost being. Jesus tells us in Matthew, when your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. If you can see clearly, that is your step toward healing. And so if you're seeing worse, that might be a gift. That might be a gift. And you can be grateful for that gift, right? Instead of angry and resentful. Because if you go down the angry and resentful path, that's going to create a different reality for you than if you go down the grateful gift, right? Still termites, but my internal feeling about all of that is very different than if like, God, why did you do this to me? This is so unfair. It's costing me $1,500 more and I don't have the money now to spend for. I'm not going there. I'm just not even thinking that way because I'm grateful that we found the termites and we can fix it. Right? Yeah, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for Instagram. I would not have survived 40 years of lies, deceit, gaslighting to cover years of adultery porn without your wisdom, insight. Yeah. So this gaslighting is on the top level. The deceit and the porn is underneath. That's worse. It's easier to believe the lies, right? If he's gaslighting you, it's easier to believe the lies than to see the truth. It's easier to believe I have bronchitis than lung cancer. But if I have lung cancer, I better know it so that I can get the best treatment possible. Okay, so mindset, step number 1. How am I going to look at this? Can I look at it with gratitude and curiosity? What does this make possible? What do I need to know, God? What do I need to know that makes me feel not happy? You don't feel happy, but grateful that I know this before I continue to go forward in a place that I shouldn't be going forward. I couldn't finish my floors until I fix the termites. I shouldn't go to marriage counseling until I see my husband is really willing to do his work. And I can't drag him to do his work. If he's not willing to do his work, then things are going to get worse. What does that mean for me? And I'll help you understand all that in the workshop. So if you haven't signed up for the workshop yet, let me put the URL up there right now. It's leslievernick.com/join workshop. And I have been working really hard on creating a handout for you. So I'm going to give you a preview. This is like 11 pages. Now it was 7 pages. Now it's 11 pages because I'm giving you some time to reflect in the workbook. Okay. So what does it cost you to be you in your marriage? Are you allowed to speak up for yourself? Are you allowed to be yourself? And I'm going to give you some time in the workshop to really reflect on those questions and answer them, not fully because we're going to try to keep it to an hour, but we want you to do your work. Do your work. Yes, your husband may have his work to do and you can't do his work, but I'm going to help you do your work so that at the end of the workshop, you're seeing more clearly. You know your next right steps forward, and you can tell, yes, my relationship is hard, but it's not abusive. Or, OMG, my relationship isn't just hard, it's abusive, and I had no idea. You're going to be able to discern that by the end of our time together. And this is important. Do you have termites or do you not have termites? That's an illustration of abuse. Is this something that's not my fault, but I got to get fixed? Or I can't live like this? And if I'm not going to get it fixed, if he's not willing to fix it, if he's not willing to look at himself and change, what do I do? What do I do? Because things are going to get worse. Right? And you're going to feel scared. And so you are going to need that support. So please come to the workshop live. Go to your calendar right now, circle Tuesday, April 8th, I think, or 9th. I can't remember what day it is. April 8th, I think it is. Circle that day. It's Tuesday, right? Whichever day it is. Circle that day, right? And pick a time, noon Eastern time or 7:30. The workshop itself will last 1 hour. I'm trying to make it a little shorter, but because I want to give you time to write, it probably will be an hour. I'm just going to be straight with you, okay? Because you have 11 pages to go through a workbook, okay? I'm going to have slides. I'm going to be teaching you how to do this, how to recognize an abusive marriage, and then what? What do you do with that? And I'm going to teach you that. And I'm going to give you this workbook. So you have to sign up ahead of time to get your workbook, to get the link. The webinar is not on social media. It's at a private place called Webinar Jam. Nobody can get into it unless you sign up for the workshop. And when you show up live, you can identify yourself any way you want on the chat. So you can be there anonymously, but still chat with your other sisters in there who are in the same boat you are, and you're going to have some support and help right there. My coaches are going to be on the feed. And so you're going to get some support and loving on and some help. And the biggest thing you're going to see is, oh my gosh, I am not alone. I am not alone with this problem. And that is helpful. I know termites are really popular in Arizona. I know that already. It's a very common problem. I'm not alone. And it helps me feel less creepy about having termites and talking about it. It's not like I have a dirty house. I don't. Just Arizona's full of termites. It's just part of the problem of Arizona. We don't get hurricanes, we don't get tornadoes, but we do have termites, and we have a lot of them. And so it's just, and so knowing that helps me feel less shame talking about my termites out loud. And when you're with a group of women who understand and are in the same boat you are, it doesn't feel shameful to talk about, I'm in an abusive marriage. How did I not know this? I feel so like, oh my gosh, where have I been sleeping? I've just been lying to myself. What's going on? And so you want to be there live. So the workshop itself will last an hour. And then I'm going to stay with one of my coaches, Coach Leanna, will be coming on, and she's going to help me do a Q&A. And you can ask your questions. And this way you can ask them more honestly, because this is our public page and you don't want to put my husband is doing this and doing that on your public social page, obviously. But you might want to ask that question in a private group. And if you can't come because Tuesday you're flying in an airplane and there's just no way you can come, I will send you a replay. I want you to have this information. I'll send you the workbook, but you don't get it if you don't sign up, right? So sign up so that we have your email address and we can send it to you. And you will get a replay. But the bad thing is you won't get the chat. You won't get the Q&A because I keep that private for people who are just live. I want you to feel as safe as possible to say what you need to say and ask the questions you need to ask in our live interaction without worrying that someone who signed up for the workshop is going to get a whole transcript of the chat. You're there or not, or a whole transcript of the Q&A. That's our private time to be together, and you will get a replay of the webinar, but that will be it, and the workbook. But so circle your calendar on Tuesday. Show up. Okay, so step one, how do I get through worse? What is it? What is it? Mindset, right? Mindset. Mindset. How am I going to think about this? All right, worse isn't bad. Write that down. Worse isn't bad. It sometimes can lead to helpful information. Yes, if I find out I have lung cancer instead of bronchitis, it feels bad, right? It feels bad. But thank God now I know, because now I know I need treatment for lung cancer. And that's the only way I'm going to get better. And if I don't get treatment for lung cancer, and even if I do, I still may die. Right. And so even if you do get treatment for a marriage that's broken, the marriage may already die or be dead because your husband isn't willing to do his work. Right. Or it's too late. There's too much damage. Even if he changes, you won't be able to trust him again. And I think this is where the church has really failed Christian women and men in that situation as well. But Christian women who, they have been lied to and lied to and lied to for 40 years. Somebody wrote on Instagram, 40 years of gaslighting and cheating and porn use and sometimes marital rape. And all of a sudden he's repentant and he wants to work on himself and he wants to work on his marriage. Yeah, well, maybe and maybe not. You don't know, but you're done. Like the marriage is dead. And so many Christian leaders put a guilt trip on you that somehow you have to learn to trust this person again when for 40 years he's lied to you. And guess how would you ever learn to trust someone like that again? And we don't ask anyone of that in any other setting. If you had an accountant that worked for you for 40 years and you found out that they were stealing money from you for 40 years, you might forgive them, and I hope you would, but you wouldn't let them handle your money again. So why is it that we put this huge guilt trip on women that you got to forgive and trust and be married to him again and put your money together and sleep with him and, all of that when you are scared of him? You don't know who he is. And he's such a good liar. You don't know if he's really repentant or not. We're going to talk all about that at the workshop. What do you do when your marriage is dead and you're being pressured to lie and pretend that it's not dead? Is that godly? Is that pleasing God? What do you do with that? So I'm going to give you a lot of gold in this workshop, totally free. I want to give it to you. So can you give yourself something, the gift of time, and show up at the workshop so you can learn what you need to learn? So let's finish our time, and then I'm going to answer some questions about hard. If it gets worse, it's scary. You need support, because when you're in a scary place, it's always better to have girlfriends around you to help you, right? Because they've been in a scary place too, and they got through it, and so you can see that. That gives you hope. Second, your mindset matters, and it's hard to hold your mindset in a good place all by yourself. That's why you need support. That's why when you go to the gym with girlfriends, you do better. When you watch your weight together with girlfriends or people who want to do that, like-minded people working together on a similar goal do better. And you will get better on your mindset when you work with positive people who are able to speak the truth with you and to you, and you're able to speak the truth back. All right, the third thing is, how can I see this differently? What does this make possible? Ask those questions. What can I be thankful for? I use the illustration of my termites. And finally, how is this going to get me stronger? How does this make me stronger? So when my daughter was 5, we adopted a little girl from Korea. She was a little bit developmentally delayed with her fine motor skills. And so when she was about maybe 3.5 or 4, we took her for piano lessons, Suzuki lessons, to help her fingers just get better dexterity. She couldn't read music. She didn't have to read music. The teacher didn't even teach her that way, but she learned to play little songs with her fingers. And she would have 15-minute lessons. And that was probably till she was about 6 or 7, until she was going to start to read music. And then it got harder. It got harder. Like, she had to read music, she had to practice longer. And this is true of all of our learning curve, right? So when you're in school, addition is real easy. Subtraction, not so good. And then when you got to algebra, oh my gosh, and calculus, oh, it's too hard. I can't do it. But when you do and you learn to do hard, what does that feel like? Progress, right? Like, I'm growing up. Like, I can play the piano. I can do hard. I don't always like learning hard, but I can do it. Like, if you saw my paintings 5 years ago, you would say, I'm learning to paint. I'm doing better. I'm doing better. All right. It's taking time and I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm doing better. And I like it. Is it hard? Do I feel frustrated? My hand's getting a little arthritic now. And so it's really hard to hold the paintbrush sometimes. And so, yeah, but I like the feeling of being able to do it better, right? I like the feeling of being able to add numbers in my head. I like the feeling of knowing how to do certain things that I didn't know I couldn't do. My friend Lisa Turkhurst tells a story when she went on vacation during her divorce, and she said she was on vacation with a friend and she was going to go to the beach and her ice maker didn't work and she wanted ice for her cooler and her sandwich and all that kind of stuff. And she started having this little pity party. And she said, oh, I'm not, if my husband was here, he would be able to fix this ice maker and I can't fix this ice maker and I don't know how to do this. And then all of a sudden this thought came in her mind. What if I could? What if I could fix this ice maker? And she went on YouTube and lo and behold, she fixed the ice maker. She did hard and it felt good. So stop telling yourself that hard is bad, that you can't do it, that you'll never get through it. If you tell yourself that, you create that kind of reality. What can I be grateful for? What does this make possible? What can I learn? How can I grow? And get the support of women who think like that to help you move through the worst until healing occurs. And healing isn't going to occur in your marriage if your husband isn't taking the same journey. But healing can occur in you. And let me say one more thing before we go to Q&A that will be said several times in the workshop. Let's do a little math. I bet all of you know addition pretty well. Unhealthy plus unhealthy equals what? It equals unhealthy, toxic. That's what your kids might be growing up in. Maybe your husband's unhealthy in a very sinful, narcissistic way. Maybe you're unhealthy in a very sinful, sacrificial, lying and pretending kind of way. Right? Both are unhealthy. So if you get through the worst to get out healthy, let me say this. I pray that will influence your husband to want to get healthy too, but it may not. But it will influence your children. And your children, whether they're grown or not, need and deserve one healthy parent. Because those of you who have grown children, who have lived in an environment where unhealthy and unhealthy, your children are often unhealthy and marry unhealthy. And the sins of the parents are repeated in the next generation. You can stop that now. You can stop that today by signing up for the workshop and understanding that hard is meant to get you stronger, not to kill you. All right. So as I'm answering questions, I'd like you to think about what your takeaway is from today. What is the one thing? We've talked about this a lot. What is the one thing that you're to take from this? What do you feel like God is saying to you about hard, about when it gets worse? Do you just kind of go down into depression? Do you go down into negativity land? Oh, why me? I don't understand why this is always happening to me. Maybe because you need some muscles to learn hard, right? God wants you to get out of algebra and get out of, addition and move into subtraction and division, because he's got something for you to do that you need to know how to do that before you get there, right? And so God is just like a good parent would take their kids for shots. Not because they hate their kids. They take my kids hate I remember when my daughter was 8 years old, we were on vacation and she got bit by my sister's dog, like big, they had a chow dog and big teeth marks all around her cheek. Like her cheek wasn't falling off her face, but she needed stitches. We're on vacation. We're in the middle of nowhere in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So I take her to the emergency room and the doctor looks at her and he goes, she's 8 years old. She's a pretty little girl. I'm not a plastic surgeon. If I stitch her up, she's going to have marks all over her face. You need to take her 2 hours to another doctor. And I can't even remember where it was, Marquette, Michigan, to stitch her up. We took her in the car. She's screaming for 2 hours. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. Things were getting worse before they were going to get healed, for sure. For her, for me, and for my husband as we're driving her to the 2 hour plastic surgeon. She's laying on the table while they're stitching her up, screaming her lungs out how much she hates us. And I just had to tell myself, it's okay. She will thank me when she gets to be 18. She might not like it at 8, but when she gets older, she will understand. And of course, we laugh about it now. But I had the mindset. She didn't. She was immature. All right. So God knows sometimes he might put you through hard and you're screaming at him, I hate you, God. I hate you, God. Why do I have to be married to this kind of guy? I hate. And God is saying, honey, you have some healing to do. And you need some healthiness yourself to be able to heal, right? One of the women, she wasn't a client of mine. I told this story before on Facebook Live, but I met her at a business conference and she said, she heard what I did. And she said, I was married to a she said, a sociopathic narcissist. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'm like, what? And she said, oh my gosh, I was such a people pleaser. I was such a weak, how did she call herself? A weak, like I was too nice. I had no boundaries. I was weak. I wanted to make him happy. I wanted to do everything he wanted me to do. I lost myself in this marriage and he completely took over my life and my personality. And I would have died had I stayed there, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. I had to learn to speak up for myself. I had to say no. I had to set boundaries. My marriage ended, but I survived. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I never want to go through that again. I learned what I needed to learn. And so here was her perspective. Yes, her marriage ended. It was sad, but she thrived. She healed. He went on to marry and never changed, right? It's the same person he's always been because he didn't want to change. All right, questions. All right, we've got lots of questions. Woo, here we go. What is your opinion on using antidepressants due to living with a covert narcissist while trying to navigate what to do and help how to do it? That's a really good question. So here's the short answer. I wish I had time to unpack it. I am so glad that you're recognizing that I am depressed. That's so long story, it's short story of long story. When I was writing my book on depression, I wrote a book on depression before I wrote any of my destructive relationship books. But the reason I started writing my destructive relationship books was all the women I was seeing who were clinically depressed were in toxic marriages. And I'm thinking, what is wrong here? Maybe depression isn't a biological problem. Maybe it's a relational problem. And that women are feeling very stuck and sick because they are told they have no other options. So that's what really got me moving. So here's how I see antidepressants, okay? I see them as a useful, necessary, sometimes crutch to help you get through things. I don't see them as useful long-term if you're not willing to do your work. Antidepressants will numb you a little bit, and sometimes they will numb you a lot. And that can be really helpful when you are so sad and so low that you can't get a bath, you can't wash the dishes, you can't take care of your kids, you can't take care of yourself. You need those crutches to be able to function, right? But they also numb you from the good feelings, right? And you don't always feel the joy and the happiness that God wants from you either. It sort of keeps you more even. And maybe if you're always in the low end, you need a little boost to be more even. But I also think that it's sort of like Theraflu. If I have the flu and I'm vomiting and I have a fever and I'm feeling really sick, I'm going to take Theraflu so I can at least function. Theraflu doesn't cure you of the flu. It just helps the symptoms of the flu. That's what antidepressants do. So if you need that, like I need a crutch or I need Theraflu, I'm going to take Theraflu. But it doesn't really fix the problem. And so I would say that this is something that you also need to look at is while I'm trying to navigate what I'm going to do about this marriage, I may need antidepressants. But don't use antidepressants just to stay in this marriage and leave it the way it is, because it won't help you get any better and it might make you actually worse. Okay. So if you need them to give you the energy to think, to function, to take action, to get the help you need so that you're not long-term taking antidepressants and dying inside and your health is being compromised because you're living with this person who's harming you. All right. Okay. When I'm facing hard times, unfortunately, the first thing I do is ask myself those questions. Is this real? Am I being emotional, sensitive? Decades of gaslighting. Yeah. And I think we have learned when we live with liars that it's hard to trust reality. I just read something. I'm trying to find out where I read it. Let me see if I can find it really quick. I thought this was really powerful. Let me read it to you and write it down. So here it is. Let's see. It says this. My tears, when they fall, listen. They are wiser than I. Where is the suffering? What does it long to be told? So what that's saying to me is sometimes our body is telling us, our tears are telling us that there's suffering, there's pain. And our mind isn't willing to accept it because we don't want to see that we've been lied to, that we're being cheated on, that our husband doesn't really care about us. That's painful. So we gaslight ourselves, right? Sometimes, oh, he didn't mean it. Oh, he's just tired. Oh, he had a bad childhood. Oh, it's not that bad. Everybody has a hard marriage. We gaslight ourselves into crazy land sometimes, right? And so I would say, and we'll talk about this in the workshop, pay attention to what your body is telling you, right? So if your body, my tears when they fall, listen, they are wiser than I. Where is the suffering and what does it long to tell me? Right? I've told this story before, but your body does keep the score. And I remember being at a conference, a Christian counselor's conference, and a woman came up to me. Her husband was with her. He was a pastor. She was 40 years old. They were looking at my books. And she said, can I give you a hug? And I said, sure. And she gave me a hug and she whispered in my ear, because of course she couldn't say it out loud in front of him, I've already had one heart attack and I'm feeling really sick. How long do I have to stay in this marriage? And I'm like, I'm in a public place. Her husband's right next to her. You know, I really couldn't say anything to her other than give her a copy of my book. But friend, your body keeps the score. Pay attention. Pay attention. All right, let me go back to your question. Yeah, is this real? Am I being emotional? Maybe you are being emotional because you need to be emotional, right? Our emotions aren't always truth tellers, okay? But when your body is emotional, when you're crying, when you're hurting, pay attention and just ask your body, what are you feeling? Why are you so downcast, oh my soul? Isn't that what the psalmist asked himself? Why are you so downcast, oh my soul? Right? And then the answer, he said, is, well, put your hope in God, not your hope in your husband changing. Because sometimes we put our hope in the wrong place. And we've talked about this in these Facebook Lives of being a man-centered woman or a marriage-centered woman. He's my source for my well-being. And if he doesn't change, I will die. That's idolatry. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. That may be a little bit where you're unhealthy. So I would just encourage you to do some work, show up at the workshop. And we're opening our doors to Conquer if you want to be a part of our membership where you'll get that support and the teaching and the help and the encouragement to take those steps forward. We only open it twice a year, so it's open April 8th if you'd like to join. And but the workshop is free and Conquer is a very low cost. It's low. We give you so much. If you paid for all of what you got in therapy in Conquer, you would pay thousands of dollars. Conquer is very low cost. It's $37 a month, I think. Or you can pay by the year. It's cheap, and you get lots of support, lots of help, and lots of information. So, all right. Let's see. What does the healthy financial relationship look like in a marriage? Do both people have access to each other's accounts? I think it depends on whether it's mutual. So I think depends on whether there's trust. So if there's separate accounts, like my husband and I have separate accounts because I've always had a work account, not always had separate accounts, but when I've, worked for myself or had a business, I've always had that business account, right? And then I have a separate account that I put like taxes and money in for that. And then he has accounts for, for us and pays bills and I pay bills. But I have access to his account. He has access to my account. We know what's in each other's accounts. But there's a trust there that he's not taking anything out of my account that I don't know about or doesn't talk to me about. And I'm not taking anything out of his account that we're not talking about. And we're not spending any money that we haven't agreed to so those are mutual decisions. So we have put mutual boundaries around our finances that we both agree to. What you'll learn in the workshop, and one of the things about an abusive relationship is that things aren't mutual. That the rules that apply to him don't apply to you, or the rules that apply to you don't apply to him, right? So he can spend money, but you can't. Or he doesn't have to give you an answer for what he used his money for, but you have to give an answer for you. So there's this unequal power structure in the relationship and unequal rule keeping that, you need to write down every expense that you pay, but he doesn't have to tell you anything. And so if it's that, so yes, it's okay to have separate accounts if that's what works for you. I think some people do that. Some people don't. I'm not going to, say, oh, God says you all have to put your money together. In this culture, there's lots of reasons why it might not be a good idea. However, the real issue that you want to look at is, do we have openness, transparency, accountability, and do the rules that we set up around our money apply to both of us, right? And this is oftentimes what happens when you have an unequal money earning structure, like the man might be earning more money or the woman might be earning more money. And so they feel entitled to boss the other person around because they are demeaning the value that person contributes to the relationship. And so let me just draw a little chart for you. And this is a little bit bigger than what you asked, but maybe some of you are asking this questions. We only have 3 resources in our life. All right, I'm going to draw the circle on black. So I'm going to pull out my whiteboard for a minute. We have time, and we all have the same amount of time, 24 hours. We have money, and we have energy. Those are our 3 resources. So how a family decides to spend these is something that you need to mutually talk about. Like, how are we going to spend our money? Are we going to use our money to, go on vacation, or are we going to use our time to go on vacation, or whose time is going to be used for work and whose time is going to be used for childcare? Or are we going to use our money for childcare so I can use my time to work? Or whose energy is going to be used to work and whose energy is going to be used to make money and whose energy and time is going to be used for childcare? And so these are the decisions that a couple needs to make in managing their family, right? And hopefully this doesn't feel like, wow, I'm using all my time to take care of the kids, and he's using all my time and energy to take care of the kids in the house, and he's using all of his time and energy to make money. But somehow he feels like now I get to decide everything about this because you don't put anything in this pot, even though you're putting just as much time and energy in the children pot, right? That's not a resource, that's an outgo. And so I think there's a lot of patriarchal, misogynistic mindset that goes around in that sometimes. And so I would say to you that if you have separate accounts, that's not a problem. If you don't have the same rules about those accounts for each of you, then that might be a problem. That might show a power differential. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in the workshop. How do you tell whether there's power differential in a relationship? And then what does that mean biblically when we talk about husbands are the head of the home and how you submit? That sort of brings into this power differential a legitimacy from the Bible that I want to really unpack for you in our webinar on Tuesday, so that you really see scripturally that was not intended by God to create a power differential in marriage at all. So I really want you to get crystal clear on that biblically. Okay. What do you do when a husband has been told he's abusing and then he flips it and says the wife is the abuser? Classic Darbo tactics. Yeah, you're right. Husbands do that. And I'm going to be talking about that. There's a tactic called deflection. And in the workshop, I'm going to be giving all kinds of illustrations of deflection. But darvo is a classic word, DARVO, that means I'm going to deny or deflect the bad off of me and onto you. I'm going to attack you and then reverse victim offender, I think. So let me give you an example. So this happens in churches a lot. They also do darvo. So you're talking to your pastor and your husband is, admitting that he cheated or he, lied or he hit you or whatever he's admitting. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. But, you don't understand, pastor. She's so unforgiving and she's so critical and she's so hard-hearted. So he's deflecting a little bit of the bad of why he did what he did onto you, right? And then you're pretty upset about what he's done because this is the 50th time he's done it, right? Or 5th time he's done it. And so you're not all warm and fuzzy at the moment. You're not like, oh, honey, I'm so grateful you're repentant and praise God and I love you so much. You're not like that. You're sitting like this, like, you're a little tired of this, right? And so your pastor or your husband may say, you're so hard-hearted. You're such an unforgiving person. You don't even know the Lord, do you? Now there's this attack. Or the pastor may say, hey, you're being pretty hard-hearted. Aren't you forgiving him? Like Jesus calls you to forgive. Can't you see he's really sorry? You're just sitting there like a stone. What's wrong with you? And so now the attack and the attention is on you. And you're trying to defend yourself and you're saying, you don't understand. This is the 50th time he's done this to me. And he always says this and he's always sorry and he never changes, whatever you say. And now, hey, Jesus tells you to forgive 70 times 7. If you're not going to willing to forgive him, then, you're the bad guy. You're the one who's breaking up this home and you're the one who's guilty of, breaking God's rules of God hates divorce. And all of a sudden, now you're the one who's being disciplined and excommunicated from your church because you didn't buy his gaslighting. You didn't buy his repentance because you've seen that before. Your crocodile tears, right? So that's what darvo is. And it happens a lot. So we're going to be talking about that in the workshop. I don't necessarily use the word darvo, but I do use the word deflection. And that's one of the signs of an abusive relationship. So please, if you have not signed up or you know someone who might need to sign up, and let me give you a little secret of how you can watch it privately. You can say to your husband, I'm going out for a little bit. I need some time for myself or whatever else. Going to visit my mom. And then just go to your car and watch it from your phone on the site in your car by yourself. Be sure to download your workbook ahead of time or bring a pen and paper. You are going to want to take notes. All right. How do you tell your body you're okay, you're safe, and you have what you need? It keeps trying to help me. So sometimes your body reacts. My body does too. When you grew up in trauma, my body will shake a lot of times. My body will overreact to something it's not danger. It's not danger. My sister and I both have a very high startle reflex. Like you can say boo and you can say it that way. We're like, that's how our body is. And so I'm just tenderhearted toward my body. It's okay, body. It's safe. I will keep you safe. And I might, I have I'm sitting on it right now, but I have a big old shawl that I wrap around me. I can rock my body. I can pat my body. If you go like this to your arms, this can really help your body because oftentimes when you were a baby, this was done to you. Or you can rub your fingers together. This also helps ground your body. Another thing that you can do is put your feet on the ground and just, take some time to talk to your body. It's okay. Just like you would talk to a baby's body. When babies are flailing, right? They're flailing because something startled them. A mom wraps it in a swaddle and they just rock it and it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And even doing this to your chest. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Right? And so those would be ways to take care of your body. And just like we would take care of our body if we smelled BO, we would wash it and we wouldn't shame it. Oh, what's wrong with you, body? You have BO again. We wouldn't do that. We would just say, yep, you have BO again. Time to wash your armpits, right? Or brush your teeth. You have bad breath. We're not like beating our body up for being a body. bodies need maintenance, right? And if your body is feeling afraid and there's no, so sometimes our body feels anxiety, and that's different than fear. So fear is usually something like I need to pay attention to, right? Anxiety is more thinking about what might happen. So if I'm taking a walk and I'm thinking, I wonder if a bear is going to come out. I wonder if a bear is going to come out. I'm taking my walk feeling anxious. I'm not afraid. There's no bear, but my body is starting to feel anxious because I'm thinking about what might happen. So anxiety is more about what might happen or what's happened in the past, and I'm rehearsing that. But fear is usually an ever-present danger that you need to use your body to fight, flight, fight, freeze, flee, or fawn. And fawn is sometimes the response that Christian women use when they're in destructive relationships. And it looks like submission, but it really is, I just have to do what he says, because if I don't, there's a price to pay. That's not biblical submission. That's fawning in a trauma response. So, all right. I need help. I work the day of the webinar. I'm wondering if there's a way you can watch it later. Well, I don't know if you work noon and 7:30 Eastern time. So one of the times, it's 2 times that day, 2 times live. So I would encourage you to see if you can make one of them. But if you can't, I did say you will get a replay, but you will miss the chat and you will miss the Q&A time, because I really feel strongly that people who show up should get some extra perks. And that's the perks that they get. But I also believe that I want you to feel the freedom to say what you want to say on the chat and not worry that somehow someone's got a copy of that somewhere. And I want you to be able to ask the questions that you want to ask, and it's not being sent out to anyone else. I can't control who signs up for the webinar. Obviously, the only people who sign up for the webinar who attend my stuff and hear from me, but they might have seen a Facebook ad or whatever. And so they might get a link to the webinar. And so they might watch it online. Sometimes pastors see it and they watch it online because they want to be better educated. And once in a while, a destructive husband might see, oh, that's Leslie Burnick. That's, I know her. She's, she's that woman who breaks up marriages and she's doing this. And they might sign. I don't know that they're not going to sign up. They usually don't show up, but they may watch it. So they're not going to get anything. And I hope they watch it. I hope they learn something. But they're not going to get the chat and they're not going to get the Q&A. We really want to keep that private. So I would encourage you, if you need this, that you prioritize this and maybe get off work an hour early, or make sure that you're home or able to go to one of them or the other. Is pornography adultery still adultery, especially when it's repetitive over the years? I believe it is. I believe it is. And we've written a couple blogs about that. So if you want some more information, I've written one and Coach Susan has written one about, is pornography adultery? So every week I write a blog. And so we get so many questions in our ministry. I can't answer everybody's questions privately, or I would just that's all I'd be doing. I can't do that. But we do try to answer questions that are relevant. And so when that question's been answered in our ministry, we've written an article about it. So if you go to leslievernick.com/blog, you'll see a whole history and a little bit of library where you can say, pornography, and click that and look at blog answers about pornography. Okay. Is it possible to have a point of view as seeing rejection as a gift? I think so. I think so. So a point of view is how you look at something, right? So how you look at something matters. And so if I look at something as an obstacle, oh my gosh, why did this happen to me? I'm going to have a certain feeling about that, right? If I look at something, same thing, as an opportunity, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? What does this have to teach me? I have a whole completely different feeling inside, and I'm going to take different action steps. If this is bad, I'm going to take certain action steps. If this is an opportunity, I'm going to take different action steps. So point of view does create some of the next chapter of your story. And we talk a lot about that in Conquer, because we want you to understand that God may be showing you things not to harm you. He may be showing you things so that you need to do something different, right? You might be, again, if your eye is healthy and you see correctly, if I see that my house is on fire, all right, and I'm not just saying, oh, it's just a noisy smoke alarm. No, my house is on fire. I'm going to get me and my kids out. I'm going to run to safety, because that's what I need to do if my house is on fire, right? And so sometimes God shows us ugly, not because he wants us to live scared. He wants us to take action. He wants us to take action for our safety. You know, sometimes pastors say stupid things, and I don't know that they mean to say stupid things. I've said stupid things too, so I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they just didn't know better. But recently a pastor said, God doesn't really talk about your safety. Just look up safety in the Bible. God talks about it everywhere in the Bible. But here's one example. So when baby Jesus wasn't safe, when Herod was going to kill all the babies under age 2, baby Jesus wasn't safe. So what did Joseph and Mary do? Well, they didn't know what to do. So God told them what to do. He woke Joseph up in a dream and he said, get out of Dodge. He didn't say, just trust me and I will keep you safe. He didn't say that. He said, flee, get out. In Proverbs, it says the prudent see danger and take refuge. If your house is on fire, get out. And we'll talk about that at the workshop because God hates all divorce, right? Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't say that. And I want to show you what it actually says. So, got to show up at the workshop. All right. Our next Facebook Live is going to be on Monday. We're going to take a weekend break. Monday morning, I'm going to be on, and it's going to be how to live with someone who's indifferent to your feelings. Oh my gosh, we're at 10 o'clock. We're over time. So how to live with someone who's indifferent to your feelings. Thank you so much for coming. What was your takeaway from today? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat or at least write it down for yourself. What was your takeaway from today? I would love to stay longer and answer your questions, but Instagram gives us a hard hour knockoff, and we've tried to be faithful to everybody else who's come to keep it within an hour so that they can know how much time they have to give. See you on Monday for our Facebook Live then, but especially on Tuesday. Sign up for the workshop. Okay? Take care. Have a great weekend. Hopefully I'll make some progress on my painting. Bye-bye. God bless.